Hey, this is Wicked, and you're watching the This Is Metal show. What's going on?
I'll tell you what's going on. This is the band's second appearance on the show. In fact, their publicist Brent reached out to us from Chipster PR, and we're so glad they did because you guys, when we had you on, we always love it when the whole entire band comes on. It was one of our favorite episodes. People really responded to that. So thanks for coming on. And our co-host filling in for Mike today is Mike Wilkerson from Fire Rock Entertainment Group. That's Tom's label. He's an A&R guy there. He's filled in before for Tom. So that's who everybody is here. And this, of course, is your guys' great latest album, Sunburn. I tell you, when I listen to this, it is like great hard rock candy. I mean, I describe it as Motley Crue versus Def Leppard. You think that's a fair assessment?
I love that. I'll take that. I'll take that any day.
I'm going to throw it to you, Mike. You must have some questions for the guys.
First of all, I know who you all are already.
Yeah, there you go, the OG.
Holy shit, bro, that's crazy.
One of your all's fathers sent it to me, whichever one's the manager's son.
Gunnar Costin,
Yeah,
Roy Costin, maybe.
Even I don't have my. I'm not even on that album.
He sent it to me back 10 years ago, so I still have it. But
That's awesome.
We've done interviews in the past too, by the way. But anyway, I guess my question for you first would be: this was your image 10 years ago, and your image is totally different now. So, what was the catalyst to change the image and go kind of in a different direction?
Well, it's kind of
we got a new drummer. And
Yeah.
He was a little taller.
He didn't fit in the other guy's boots anymore. But in all seriousness, like when we were bringing Gunnar on and everything, it really changed the dynamic of the band. You know, Gunnar just has his own way of playing, and in my opinion, biased opinion maybe, but he is just an incredible, like, hard-hitting drummer, and like the way the music started to change as we integrated and started living together and writing and everything. It was like, just like anything, just like growing up, which we were doing too. Just the band evolved, and I always say that, these guys laugh at me. They'll be like, "Oh, here goes Danny again." When we're doing a new campaign or a new writing session or project, I want to infuse some new things in it because I want us to be excited. So I think that's where the evolution really comes from. Yeah, absolutely. But we love the white. That was our like calling card in the beginning because everybody's always in black, right? Everybody, kind of. When I think of rock and roll, it's how do you kind of, at least from a punk rock standpoint, how do you go against the grain and stand out? And that even goes for in the rock and roll scene. So when we started our career, we're like, you know what? Forget everybody else. We're just going to put on like a stark white cowhide leather clad 7-inch boots and really make a statement. And I think it was cool. It was a good.
Was that from being Angel fans?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Well, there's a story behind it, right? We love Angel, and it had really nothing to do with it. More so, it had to do with this album right here, $1 Billion Babies, right?
Oh, yeah.
50 years old this year. Nice.
Level.
All right. Yeah.
We just took it to a little different level with the leather, and put our own flair on it. But I always say I love Angel, and remember that show we did with them in Brooklyn? Yeah, at
Knitting
Factory.
Knitting Factory. It's closed down now, but yeah, that was like one of the last.
Super cool. Like one of the coolest memories because, like I said, big fans of Angel, and that was kind of ironic. So when we hit stage and everything with them, I remember Punky coming back and like talking with us about like, hey, like I like those outfits, and we were like joking about it and everything. It was a cool memory for sure.
Not to interrupt, but can you all move in a little closer because
yeah.
You all are like off camera and it's hard to see you all. So if you can't move just a little closer together, that's great. Right, Jason?
We got you guys, don't worry. I mean, what I love about even the interview today and the image, the new look, or whatever you guys want to call it, is like I heard Paul Stanley talk about how Alice Cooper was obviously an influence on Kiss. And they went initially, all 4 guys went to see an Alice Cooper concert. And their thought process was, okay, you know what? It's just one guy in the band getting dressed up. We're going to take that to the extreme. And all 4 of us are going to kind of get all dolled up. And I love the fact that you guys are all, you got great rock and roll look, you got a sound. I love it how there's a unity to the band. It's not just like the front man, that's front and center. I love the fact that everybody's included.
Gang mentality. I think
Yep.
it probably comes from living together. You know what I mean? We've been living like an old school band, like I think we mentioned last time, for many years. And I love that you touched on the outfits and the evolution, because we've got a new album coming up this coming year, and I've just been sitting here with the boys, and we've been coming up with the next evolution, right? Like, what's it going to look like now? So, but we always stick to our core of, it's just rock and roll, man, and we love,
we like too,
yeah,
it's not contrived, it's just whatever we think is the
authenticity for
thing.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, even look at a band like Motley Crue. I mean, you go all the way back to our first album, Too Fast for Love. That was almost kind of had a punk element to it. And then you get Shout at the Devil, which is full blown on metal, and then they take it another direction with the glam album of Theater of Pain.
But not only that, Jason, Motley Crue. I mean, I grew up in that era, so Motley Crue always gave us something different. Like Too Fast for Love, the image was different than Shout the Devil. Shout the Devil was different than Theater of Pain. Theater of Pain was different than Dr. Feelgood and Girls, Girls, Girls. So as a child, not a child, but a teenager, we always strived. We're like, oh, what are they going to look like? What are they going to look like? You know? So that was big when I was growing up. So I understand what you're saying as far as the evolution of this.
Yeah. And it's funny, Mike. These guys are so much younger than us, and yet they're still influenced by Alice Cooper. And they point to $1 Billion Babies. That's an album that just turned 50 years old. So Alice is even influencing the younger generation.
Right. It's so funny. People always give us like the strangest look, the normies out there when they talk to us about music, and it's like Cooper, AC/DC. I mean, like all those like early 70s hard rock bands, UFO, Thin Lizzy, those were the bands that, like, when we were kids, that's what hit us first, right? Like, I don't know what the heck we were doing that, like, that's what we saw, but like, I mean, Gunner's dad, plays music, and he's been in the industry for a while, and but for some of us, it was like, that's just what we caught fire with first, and it'll always be, our tried and true. So
that gives me hope, because you hear people say that music, rock is dead, and I don't believe it's dead, but I believe rock stars are not as many out there as there once were, but bands like Wicked give us hope. I can name you guys, maybe the Dead Daisies. And the Dead Daisies is an interesting band because they don't even keep the same lineup. They got a revolving door of guys that come in and out of the band, and yet the music and the songs are just kind of that good. So I think there's hope for the new generation of rock, if you will. I mean, all the bands that we grew up, like Aerosmith, Kiss, Ozzy, Black Sabbath, are all kind of just in the last few years retiring. The so-called dinosaur rock bands, they're getting to that age where they can no longer get up on the stage. And so I think with bands like Wicked and the Dead Daisies, like I said, you guys are hopefully the next generation of the rock gods.
That's what we're working for, and more for ourselves first and foremost, because like this Friday we're going to go into a single release and kind of have our last show locally here in Rochester at this dive called Lux. And the cool thing about that is, you're talking about the younger generation getting back into rock and roll. This is like a college kind of scene dive. And the last time we did it, end of last year, it's just all these young people that you wouldn't maybe normally see at like your regular metal or rock show.
Yeah.
But the thing that we got out of it last time and hope to do again is, if you could just entertain and like show people that passion and energy and excitement, that escape, right? Like, you see that young crowd get into it, and I think that's what rock and roll needs is find a way to connect with the youth again. You know what I mean? I think people are used to just seeing trippy bands. You know what I mean? And so if you come out there and you're authentic and original and you're having fun with the crowd, that's where you're going to connect.
Yeah, and see, I think a band like Wicked, you guys, as you just made the point, you can go out and play shows of various different types of bands. I mean, I could see you guys playing metal bands, hard rock bands, maybe even a band that's a little more popular than even what you do. Yeah.
I mean, and that's a good point too. I like that because, that's how we treat our influences. I think we've talked about that before. We don't set goalposts where we're worried about, oh, maybe, oh, we shouldn't listen to the Tubes. Like, what if we sound a little too progressive or, that's not how we think. It all blends up into Wicked. So I think we can hang, I agree with you. I think we can hang with pretty much anything. And it's about that demeanor you have, right? That's what rock and roll was always about, the attitude at the end of the day. That's what drove
Yeah.
people to it. So if you keep that in mind, I think doesn't matter who you're playing with or where you're playing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. You have any questions for the guys, Mike?
Yeah. Could each of you tell everybody your name and what are your influences? Each one of you.
I'm Gunnar. I play drums, and I like I'm more into the metal, like the heavier side of stuff. I like a lot of Overkill and the stuff like that, the thrash metal stuff. So that's where I get a lot of my drumming influence from.
Okay, okay.
I'm Scotty V, lead guitar, and I've got a kind of eclectic group of influences. My favorite band growing up was always Aerosmith since I was a little kid.
Wow.
But as I got older, I really like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like a lot of '90s stuff like that, and
Okay. Yeah.
kind of goes all over the place.
I'm Chad Michael, lead singer, rhythm guitarist. I'm more of like that power pop, like Cheap Trick style rock and roll. Even like you could like
Oh,
Dean mentioned like Thin Lizzy mentioned earlier. A lot of like really upfront vocalists, David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust era. A lot in that ilk, and then obviously grew up with the '90s music, so like Third Eye Blind and all that kind of stuff too.
okay, okay. Yeah.
Danny, bass guitar. And normally I try to talk before Chad because he just takes all of my influences and makes it sound like I'm copying him. But to kind of dive into it a little bit more, it's like, I think a couple of us have got bit by that bug. Again, like they said, we're 90s kids, 2000s kids, and we started with that 70s hard rock. So like I could tell you, for hours how much I
Yeah.
love Play from UFO
Oh,
or Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy and just all of the aspects of that. But yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I have no embarrassment saying that, like, Sum 41 is an awesome band and I've just listened to them since I was a kid, going to
wow, wow.
stuff
So
like
you're,
that.
yeah, your influences are all. Now let me say, Danny and Chad. Now that you say Cheap Trick, I kind of see you both have kind of a Robin Zander look. Maybe Chad a little more, only Chad because the length of your hair is more like Robin's. But you guys both
Yeah.
got that Robin Zander look going.
He's my favorite.
I love that. That's a great
He
compliment.
has the bunny mustache.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what I love about Cheap Trick is probably the same thing as you guys. Like you go back to the debut album, they almost had a punk sound. Every album kind of they have a different sound. And the same band
Yeah.
like they had a big comeback in the '80s with that power ballad, The Flame, but they were all over radio. And so they got a lot of flack for that. But hey, that's one of those songs they have to always play. For the rest of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me ask you guys about this now, because like I said, just beautiful ear candy. I urge people to go out and get the album, and it's one of those albums that probably the hardest part of picking a single is like which one to put out first, because you got a lot of great videos. Like I love the song "Lost in the Dark" because I don't know about you guys, but I can't tell you how many times in my life I'd be like in a bad part of town. I'd be somewhere I didn't even like really know, and I'd be terrified, like, oh, I gotta. Thank God for GPS now, right?
Yeah.
That it's so true, and it's funny because you could take that analogy, and I always say that Scott's meaning of Lost in the Dark is his relationship with different women he's met, right? So like he's always found himself in precarious situations with them. So when we went and wrote that song, it was a lot of fun because we threw in all the little metaphors and stuff, and got to build like this really cool story. I love our writing process, the way we get to do that together because it's natural. We just sit down, we live together, we sit down, and if something's hitting or we got a good influence, we'll go with it. And if not, we got other things to do. And but it's always fun because I'll be walking around, I'm like, oh, what's that one line I just had? Like, pack a halo, save it for later. Like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Like You just
Yeah.
come up with these cool little like poem things and build on it with each other, and the guitars are going, and Gunner's coming up with a beat. So that was a fun one for sure.
Yeah, and now let me ask you, because the overall sound of the album is like a great hard rock pop. I mean, it got elements. I must say, of like Cheap Trick. Now that you mention it, but like the overall sound, you got Summer and Sunburn. So I know they're metaphors, but it almost sounds like this could be a album about having a good time feeling music, about the actual summer, laying in the sun, or metaphoric. Like I love the last song, "Don't Take Away My Sunshine." I mean, I'm sure that's metaphor for the one you love. Don't take away my sunshine. But that's what I love about these songs and the way they're written. It could have more than one meaning.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's I always say that's the best part of music. Like one person could take it that way. The other person might know that we wrote that last song about our grandmother that passed. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it doesn't have to mean the same thing to everybody. And I think that's when you have a powerful song is when
It speaks to multiple people. That's
well, it becomes its own thing to other
Yeah.
people. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And
that
like
is-
you just kind of answered this, but that must be a great feeling when you know what you wrote the song about, but maybe somebody, after they see you play in concert, they come up and after the show, hey, I just love that song, Sunburn and Sun, and you wrote about your grandmother. We're like, oh, that reminds me of my dad I just lost or something, and
exactly, yeah.
and it's obviously not written about their dad, but you're like, wow, I'm glad that song means something to you.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a cool moment for us, I think, on this album as we talk about evolution. We let ourselves kind of be a little bit more vulnerable in our writing in that particular situation, and like kind of shed those expectations of like sometimes you get in rock and roll where you always got to be hard and fast and tough and all this stuff. So it's fun. We're having a blast like coming up with new ideas.
It wasn't even supposed to be on the album.
Yeah.
Kind of just ended up on it.
Last minute Johnny.
So Mike, as I said, is an A&R guy at Fire Rock Music Group. Mike is an A&R guy. Not that they need our help, but what do you think about the band Wicked? I mean, how they presented themselves. I mean, I think these guys should give lessons on how to do interviews. I mean, I love the fact that they always show up together. There's no bickering, there's no backstabbing.
Well, I've known about the band obviously for at least 10 years. And, I always thought they were a good band. They reminded me a lot of what was going on in Scandinavia and, over in Sweden and places like that with the bands like Cruel Intentions and Veins of Jenna, which is Cruel's Intention. I'm trying to think of bands and I can't think of them.
We're big Helicopters fans. Backyard Babies.
Superstar.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many bands over there that the thing about Scandinavian over there, the bands are just so amazing if you like that kind of music. I was just talking to my friend Andy and Michael Monroe's doing a tour of America next year.
We're just
I've never seen him. I've never seen him, so I'd love to see him. My question for you goes into that kind of, and each one of you answer. I know you played with a lot of people, but who's a band that you'd love to be able to open for that you haven't opened for yet?
Michael Monroe. For real. Talking about, I was like, dude, could you imagine being on? We saw him in Poughkeepsie with Hardcore Superstar. Gunner was working that day.
Yeah,
but like, what a cool, hardworking, passionate individual, and his band's amazing too. Just so that'd be my pick for sure.
I mean, I'll go back to Cheap Trick. I know they're still touring and stuff, and Dean and I have seen them a few times, in the past, and they're just so energetic and like they match our style of music and everything. I think it would be a great lineup.
Yeah, and Cheap Trick these days they're also a family unit because Rick Nielsen's son is a drummer now.
That's
Cool.
That's crazy.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned you're working on this new single. You want to tell us about that, and will there be a video for that? Tell people when they can check that out.
Yeah, Reptile Roots.
Oh, me? Okay. Yeah. This is coming this Friday, Friday the 13th. We have a music video for this new single, Reptile Roots, as well as, streaming on every streaming service.
Go ahead, Danny. I'm sorry.
This one's pretty cool because it's kind of one of those ones out of the vaults that we've reworked.
Okay.
Um, and we talked about some of the early history of the band early on in the interview, and this is kind of a cool thing that we've kind of been not afraid to do is like, hey, like, we know a lot of fans like this. Maybe it was on a limited release somewhere on a vinyl, this or that. And so sometimes we'll dig back into the archives and rework something and give it a new flair, and that's kind of where Reptile Roots is right now, and it's fun. I always say it's like it's an analogy or it's a song about that rock and roll attitude and spirit. It's that bloodline really of people who get that, and you either born with it or you're not.
Is that on Life Alive?
I
I
think so.
can't remember.
Hey, Mike, look on the back of that record real quick and see if Reptile Roots is on there.
I don't know if it is.
I don't know if it is either.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's on here. It's a
Yeah, so you'll get both iterations of it. You'll see the evolution of it.
Yeah.
It's definitely come
So
along.
Gunnar, what do you add to the new version? Obviously the killer drum sound, but is it really going to be kind of like a different version of the song, or just kind of a modern day version?
Oh hell yeah, it's gonna
It's
be way
very different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
way
mean, the heart and soul is still there on what the song originally was, but there's a lot of. I don't want to give anything away. I want you to hear it.
You mentioned Scandinavian bands. I'll say our Helicopters influence kind of crept in to the song. So
great band.
Alex, I would say the Thin Lizzy influence.
yeah, that's
you
true.
know?
That's true. Yeah,
And let me ask you guys, because on the cover of here, you guys look like a bunch of Swedish like models, like Swedish rockers. People see the album cover, they think you guys are from another country.
Sometimes
all the time.
sometimes we just don't even correct people if they're like, "Are you guys from Sweden?" We're like, "Yeah, thanks, man."
Been here so long that we lost our accent.
Or even at the minimum, they'll think we're from California. No one knows that we're from New York. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of my surprise when I talked to you guys the first time when we had you on, because I thought, just looking at the album cover, I thought, oh, they must be from Sweden, and then when I'm listening to the album, okay, they're from California, obviously.
Yeah.
And so you guys are gonna, I guess, at the point where you're starting to work on the next album. Have you started writing at all, or
I'll tell you what, this album is done. Like we're just waiting for it to come back for mastering, and we're super excited to share it with everybody. We worked on it. What would you say? Probably early this past year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we went out on the Raven tour, we kind of finished tracking it, and what a cool experience. The recording process, even with this upcoming album, evolved a bit, right? We have the studio we built in our house and all these things that we're able to do, but we did our work here in that casual manner, and then we went to this studio near us called Linden Oaks, and it's this huge room, like beautiful place. I think they had an API board that we tracked to and used a lot of outboard gear, and worked with our producer Nacho Molino. Very cool experience taking it to a whole different room. It gave it, I think, again, like that evolution, it gave it its own feel. Like different things came out by doing that. And I'll tell you what, I'm pretty stoked for you guys to hear some of the songs on this album.
so you think it'll come out like obviously next year? Is that the plan?
We go into the summer, yeah.
And talking about a little bit about the last album that Mike was holding up. How old is that? Like,
What would you say about
Like we said, it's before Gunnery was even in the band.
What,
So
10, 11 years?
10 years, maybe?
10
10
years?
years. It says 2014.
There you go.
Yeah, we
10
tracked
years.
that whole thing live too, which was a cool experience. And that was just a fun little limited release that we wanted to put out there for the fans at the time because we didn't really have any albums that were
I was in
and so
high
that's
school.
the question. When you guys play a concert, like you've been playing mostly the new stuff, or do you play a combination of what's on there too?
That's cool. We mix it up. Scotty, tell them a little bit about.
That's a mixed bag. I mean, it depends on where we're playing, our occasion is. But like for example, when we play our hometown Rochester area, we know a lot of people have seen our material a lot or heard it, and so we'll play brand new stuff that's not recorded at all.
Mixed in with some fan favorites,
Mixed in with
but
this,
people, it's cool because people have started to catch on to that, right? So like now you got people like they want to come to every show because, you know, they know if we're in a certain area, we might be testing new material out. And they're like, oh damn, like I want to see what the new song is, or like what do they got cooking up? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I mean, I think Wicked's becoming more mainstream, if you know what I mean. More people become familiar with you guys. Whereas maybe when the latest album came out, I think a lot of people thought, oh, this they must be a new band. I never heard these guys. And then it's cool to find out, no, wait, they got a history.
There's nothing like walking out of like a Planet Fitness locker room and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, wait, are you guys the guys that sing that song Sunburn?" And we're like, "That's freaking cool."
Like I didn't know I get recognized going to the gym. Yeah, that is cool.
So two questions.
Yeah.
So the first one, how many releases have come out since this? And are they on vinyl? And is the new one going to be on vinyl too, or what?
So I think since that release, there was one more. I'd say I call prehistory, right? So that I consider that prehistory of where we're at right now. So there was one other release. It was Rock and Roll. It came out on CDs.
Origins. You have the cover records as full.
Yeah.
All that stupid shit.
Yeah. So there was a few limited releases back then, but I think in 2020 or was it 2021?
2021.
We released The Last American Rock Band. That came out on all streaming services. We had,
CDs,
vinyl. And then after that came Sunburn. So we'll be going on,
And of course, I realize, not a lot of people buy CDs these days, but I don't think you guys have that problem. So the more popular Wicked comes, do you think you might re-release the older catalog?
I think that there's a lot of chance for that. And I think that could be a lot of fun, especially putting it on vinyl. I think people would love to see like the very first release, Origins, maybe re-released on vinyl. That had such a cool look. Like, of course, it's gonna have Gunner now. You know what I mean? So that's where that new light comes. But there's some pretty cool stuff. And the other thing too, I wanted to say is, keep an eye out for some different formats because like, you'd be surprised. You say, CDs are kind of a thing of the past, which is true, but you'll see people at shows in person and they want CDs,
Well, I like to hear that, Danny, because I like to hear that because I'm an old school guy. Like I said, rather than get the download, I got this. Just I'm an old school guy. Like even prepping for today's interview, I'm listening to this on the way home from work, in my car. Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure having you guys come on. And when the new stuff comes out next year, we'd love to have you back. But happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you guys. Can't wait to be rocking in the new year with Wicked.
Hey, it was great talking to both of you again. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, Mike, for filling in. Take care, guys.
Nice seeing you guys.